So, Oley Larsen,
Yeah.
you're not going to throw your hat in the ring
All
this year.
right. So, I sit and I think, have you ever hit the hole in one? Or, I used to surf when I was a kid. You get that good wave. There's been a lot of hole in ones in my career in this, and there's been a lot of good wave surfing. Some of the things that I wanted to just thank my constituents, District 3, for continuing to support me. I mean, there is no lack of support there by any means. And it's just been a fun ride. And I think as I've built the district and the help of the district building it, I just think it's time to go. I've always said when you get into office, you buy a puppy. And when the puppy gets up and grows up and then dies, you need to move on from the office. And I lost both of my dogs this last year. So there's many things that have been telling me that I've done the work I came to do, and I just feel very comfortable in moving forward.
Okay, so when did you start?
Well, I started back in 2010, going against an incumbent that everybody thought was unbeatable. And I had a fire under me that I wanted to be involved, and I made it happen. And a lot of support from the young Republicans, a lot of support from neighbors and friends, and just strategizing on how to run a good campaign. And wore out a couple pairs of tennis shoes. I told my constituents when I started running that I'm going to vote as a Republican. I'm going to be a trustee of District 3, and I'm going to read every bill. And those were my main jobs that I thought would do it. And people listened. People wanted a new start. They wanted a new, fresh face. They wanted somebody that'd look them in the eye and say, this is what I stand for, and this is how I'm going to vote, and these are the issues that are passionate to me, of life issues and getting rid of entitlements, always fighting against that government creep. It's just a never-ending battle that continues. But I have enjoyed that, and I think that I showed District 3 that it can be done if somebody wants to be a real Republican, follow the Republican platform, and stand for its principles, and have a good moral compass, and do some good work for the state of North Dakota.
Briefly describe real Republican. What is that?
Well, that's a good question, and it's an easy question. Our Republican has a foundation, Republican Party. We have a platform. We have resolutions that everybody looks at. They read them. Some people adhere to them more than others. We're a pro-life party. We're a less government party. We don't want, less government is good government. And our platform and our resolutions at the national level reflect that. And when we adopt our resolutions at the state level and our platform at the state level, it seems to have reflect what I can embrace. So what happens, what I notice, is that you get people that run on the Republican Party ticket, because if you're a Republican in North Dakota, it's very popular. You can have a political career, as compared to the Democratic ticket that is, their philosophy is not the same. And now they have been hijacked, so the Democratic platform is totally not in sync with North Dakota. So if you stick to those platforms and you have a good moral compass to that, that to me is a real Republican. When you have a bill, for an example, we have some legislators that call themselves real Republicans. And our state of North Dakota pays public employees the full family insurance for the person that's the public employee, their family, their dependents, everybody. We are the only entity in probably the globe, in North Dakota for sure, that pays 100% of the insurance. That is not a Republican platform idea of where we pay for everything for everybody as a benefit, that is absolutely stealing people from the private sector to come work for the government. That's not a Republican value that I believe. So I vote against those type of bills that come forward. And I've been told by some that, a person votes for the bill just because they don't know what it's about or that it's not in it, tagging that to me, which is incorrect because I read every bill and I know that that's what we're doing. When we have a whole Republican Party push for the library, the Teddy Roosevelt Library, which is the only presidential library in the United States that is funded with taxpayer dollars. Everybody else donates money to these libraries. And the Republican Party and some Republicans, the governor who started this push for the library, thinks that that's a Republican idea. That's not what Republicans stand for. That's not, to me, that is not. And I stood up on the Senate floor and said that this was wrong to be doing those kind of bills. I've done that often. In my tenure or in the time in the saddle in District 3 and in the Senate, I have been told by some that I'm the moral compass of the Senate chamber. So I stand up against Native American women who are my relatives, their rights for being able to be identified and the ideas of what minorities play in North Dakota and how I can make that equal. I stand up for the elderly. I stand up for all of those things. But when we move into entitlements of where Obamacare is 138% of poverty, and we step up and we put in way more than 138% of poverty to cover people for services, that to me is an entitlement. And so I vote against that kind of stuff and have been. And the people that in District 3 that we have built a team with believe in those same philosophies of the Republican Party.
I was just going to ask you, you haven't nominated in District 3 yet? Or
Our nominating convention is Monday. So everybody is all excited about the convention down here. We're going to be able to network and talk with people and the new delegates, which is another amazing thing in District 3 that I feel I help play a part in, is getting people active in the political process. We call a meeting now and 20, 30 people show up, whereas before it was nothing, So that was another key thing that I liked about that. But we've got people on board that are engaged, and we can get people to the table, which is nice.
So looking ahead, how active is Oley Larsen going to be going forward for District 3 for Republicans, for your belief as a Republican?
All right. Well, that's a great question. And I believe I will continue to be active because I still have the fire of being an activist and standing up and saying, hey, this is wrong. We have to make a change somehow. And what I've noticed in the last few sessions is I am getting better at leading from behind or leading in the background, not really having to be up front and be leading the charge. I don't mind leading the charge, but I think for myself, I've become more effective by being in the background and just encouraging people on what to do, how to do things, and move forward.
So this is being taped on Friday night. We haven't been to the convention floor on Saturday. Is District 3, which side do you think District 3 is going to fall on? Are they going to be the ad hoc group that's trying to be more conservative, more Republican? I guess I don't know how to put it. It's depending on who you're with. So
well, I think what I've noticed and what I've tried to change in District 3 and move along is that the Republican values in District 3 are very strong. And there's a lot of constituents in District 3 that have, in the past, felt disenfranchised about their Republican Party. And that's why we had Democrats running District 3, because I felt, and I could communicate that with my constituents as I was walking the streets. Why go vote if the people that we have in the seat are a bunch of Democrats in philosophy anyway? Our previous representative that I served with always voted against our pro-life bills. We lost a personhood bill by 3 votes in the House, and that individual was one of the 3 votes. And it was discouraging. And those type of things that the constituency starts to realize, and the COVID really brought it forward as well. That fiasco that has happened and what our governor did in that, and our legislators really dropped the ball with that mask mandate by compromising. That compromise caused chaos in Fargo, in the school districts, in the workplaces, and everywhere else. If we would have retained that bill in its entirety the way it was written, we wouldn't have had this nonsense that we had to live with this last year that we were dealing with it. The thing that I find, touching on the COVID a little bit, the thing I find interesting about that is when it first started, they were always talking about the death count. And the death count at the end of the first year was about 1,200, or I don't really remember the number. But the next year, which was last year, it might have been 700 or 800 people. Now they don't even talk about the death count. So for 700,000 people in North Dakota, we shut down our whole state for less than 0.0001% of the population. We should be shutting down our state for people that are obese. We should be shutting it down for the people who are speeding. It was absurd, and it still is absurd that heart disease is still the #1 killer in the United States, and yet we shut our whole country down on this. And it is a shame that I'm hearing our state health department telling 5-year-olds to get shots, 12-year-olds to get these shots, and the data is starting to roll in. The military is having more deaths from the shots than people that had the COVID. That's pretty sad.
So you're pretty tireless when you go out on the street. It takes time if you're going to get elected for the right reasons. Is that right?
Anybody can sit in the seat they choose, but you have to work for it. And I know my constituents. I know that we have mosques in my district, and I embrace the Muslim faith, religion, those folks, good, hardworking Republicans. And I know that we have an area where there's independence. I know my neighbors. I loved campaigning. If I would go campaigning and somebody was changing their oil, I'd help them change oil. If they were at a barbecue and offered me a beer, I'd drink a beer with them. They say when you campaign, you're only supposed to spend maybe less than 10 seconds or a minute with each house because you don't have time. You got to cover. I started when the snow melted and just went. I can remember 20 calls a day, foot trafficking, wearing out 2 pairs of shoes. And that wasn't just the first campaign. I love campaigning so much I did it every campaign season. And that's the one of the many things that I will miss is getting out and knowing your neighbors.
Okay. And so now let's just kind of roll it over to the award that you went down to Florida, right?
Right, yeah.
And talk about the award. It was, I believe, was for being conservative.
Yeah, it was very, very humbling. And if anybody would want to start their campaign and get geared up, even if you don't get an award or whatever, if you attend that where the conservatives of the nation meet, it was great. It was fun. I had followed that, and I have been a pretty high scorer the whole time, not knowing really what they were all about. I knew it was a conservative pack. I knew that they had some pretty good speakers there and people going. So when I was offered this award, 90%, I'm the highest conservative voter in North Dakota in the Senate. That's pretty humbling. And there are some other conservatives in the Senate. I remember a few sessions back that I was the only no vote on against bills on many bills, and I used to get a lot of pushback from that. You just vote against everything. No, I vote against bigger government, more money going down the tube, and so when you stay true to those Republican values, and a bill comes up that has all kinds of entitlements and junk, and it's easy for me to vote against it. And I always got pushback saying, well, what's your constituents going to say? What's the city of Minot going to say when you're voting against this issue or that issue, or the lobbyists? Well, that's how I'm voting. And I had conversations, and I was consistent. I'd like to think that I was consistent with that my whole career. I wasn't what you call a windsock legislator. Which way is well? Okay, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to vote this way or that way, and I wasn't like that, and got a lot of pushback from it, but it was true to the conservative values that I believe the Republican Party is about and embraces. And that's why I found it so strange that I haven't been there very long, and I'm voting that conservative. The leadership, when they say they're conservative, many of them say that they're conservative, and it just irks me. It's like saying you're not a drug addict or an alcoholic, but yet you're still going to the bar every night. Yeah. When they say that, I know they're going to the bar every night, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm good at what I do." Well, it's just I can remember I was in a meeting with some legislators, and I was talking about the platform, and I was talking about the Republican rules, and the one legislator goes, "Oh, as soon as I'm elected, I know they're there, but I got to vote to keep the state going." Well, and that's a Republican in leadership that talks like that. And it was disheartening when I heard that. So, I could see that there was some difference of what a real Republican, and in my view anyway. And I know now I'm hearing a lot of fluff about the people that are running in the Senate, that, oh, it's just single bill issues, and it's just this part of you can't just cherry pick the Republican. The whole platform and the whole resolutions of that, when you take that all into account, that's a Republican. But then when you have a Republican vote for tons of money giveaway and entitlements, they can't keep saying that, and I don't know why it's on the news and radio that they just keep regurgitating, I'm a conservative, and they're not. The numbers don't show it. The CPAC doesn't show it. We have a state individual that does a numbers on it as well that I score fairly high on, really high on. If you average those two numbers together, and you can't discredit that. That's factual information on bills that exist.
Okay, so two questions we're going to talk about. Roll ahead a year, and you and I are sitting here again, looking back at this date. What would you like to have happen in the next year? Based on, we're going to elect people from District 3. What would look back and say, hey, Rod, on that day, this is what happened?
Well, that's a great question. We have a great team, and I have reached out to Bob Paulson, to take my spot in the Senate. The guy is a rock solid, real Republican. I'm not even going to call him a conservative Republican, which he is, but he is a Republican. Jeff Larsen is a Republican. And we've got this Lori Van Winkle, who has decided to move forward, and we want to endorse her. District 3 wants to endorse her. I hope District 3 does endorse her. It sounds like Roscoe Striley has put his paperwork in, which is fine. I don't discredit that. But we already did that. We've already walked that path. And when that path was walked and they left, we're moving forward. We've got new vision, new ideas. Roe versus Wade is going to pass in June. The papers are, I guarantee that that's going to happen. They heard the case earlier this winter, and they'll write the report on that. And it's either Kennedy or Roberts to write it, and one of them's got a pretty big ego and wants to write the report, so he's not going to vote no. And the numbers just aren't there. So that's how I feel about that. I'm hoping that we get some property tax elimination, not the buy down gimmick that we did with the human services, taking the 20 mills. That was a total sham. I believe that this buying down the education mill levies, I disagree with that so much that it's just, we need to get rid of property tax. And I would like to see some kind of a term limit. I know that the Jeffersonian thought, which I embrace, is that the constituents vote you in and keep you in. If they like you, great, then you stay there. I fully feel that I would have been reelected in another landslide, 1,000 or 1,200 votes. The numbers have been consistently that way. And I have been more verbal, I've been more in the spotlight, I'm the head of the Bastia Caucus, which is another great organization. It's so good that the establishment can't stand it because they don't want to embrace Republican platform and resolution ideals. And it's nothing new, it's just the information of it. But I would like to see that continue to grow. There are some people that say it's a secret society. As the leader, everybody was welcome. I even let the public come in and interested parties who wanted to input information. We have lobbyists come, and anybody could join. And the legislators, some of the legislators of the Republican Party and the Bastia, they didn't like that. They didn't like to be so open. There's things that only legislators need to talk about. And I thought, as long as I'm running the show, it's about policy and not politics. That was my mantra all the time. So I'd do newsletters, and it was not secret to anybody. And what was very irritating is when you start putting policy out and informing the legislative body and anybody and everybody who wants to know about it, that information becomes powerful and it irritates people. And just the show of how that was effective is, I used to be 46-0 on that board. They said 46 to Oley many times. Last session, I could start seeing it turn. And on the budget bill for human services, after the policy was given to everybody and knew about it, not just me voted against it. There was some significant names on the board, significant people. So I believe, and I've always believed, that there is about 10 or 12 true Bastia Caucus people that are engaged. Everybody can be engaged if they want to, that are there. And it's growing. So Jeff Magrum gets in, Sebastian gets in, a couple of these other folks get in. It will turn the tide. And people are saying, well, we got to get rid of some of these legislators that are a bunch of rhinos. And no, don't worry about that. And we got to get rid of some of these other people that are, I call them the windsock legislators, that they just turn where. And I said, don't worry about them either. Those folks, once they see the movement turning, those legislators will start following because they don't want to lose their seats. They don't want to lose assignments. They don't want to be left out in the cold. So the windsock legislators are not to be worried about. The ones who say they're the Republicans and follow the party and are not, those are the ones that we actively need to get rid of.
Yeah. So we go what would be, of course, we're in the state of North Dakota. If they were going to write a legacy for Oley, and I know you're not that kind of a person. I've known you for a long time. But if there was a legacy and it was a one sentence, how are we going to remember Oley Larsen?
Well, I am one of the only enrolled members. I am the only enrolled member that was a president pro tem. I have been told that I am the moral compass of the Senate chamber. And getting rid of medical marijuana, getting rid of some really kids being able to come 3 feet from the bar, and I killed that stuff. Overreach from, that life bills. It's I take a lot of pride in that. Also, that some of the big bills, the life bills, even though they didn't pass, the personhood bill was a very good bill. And the pilot truck project that we're doing right now that passed, they're good pieces of legislation. I did have a lobbyist one time come up to me and he goes, I don't agree with probably 90% of the stuff you say or do or how you vote, but I'll say one thing: you are a working fool. You work and you know that bill. You read all the bills. I don't agree how you're voting on it, but we know where you stand. And I like that. I took integrity. A lot of times people just say, oh, that person doesn't know what he's doing, he's crazy or whatever. And it's nice to hear that people appreciate that you know the issue and you can come back and say, hey, I remember that was there. We can't do that because that's in the bill. You got to read the bill. And then when they try to sneak stuff out of the bills, and they do that all the time.
So when the gavel falls in 2023 and Oley isn't there, is it going to be coulda, woulda, shoulda?
No, not at all. Not at all. I would like to pursue being an ambassador. I've always said that. I was afforded that opportunity, I think it was a session or so back, but I was still deep into what I wanted to do in North Dakota, so I didn't do that. But I'm open for that kind of thing. That would be icing on the cake to finish off doing something like that.